When you think of a snow day, you probably think of the anticipation and hope that we feel as students. But for Mr. Hodge,
nerve-wracking, pressure, and in the end, relaxing.
That difference is vast, but it's what makes snow days so interesting. From changing weather conditions to last-minute decisions to Twitter replies, snow days at Avon are something special. I'm Logan Murray, and this is Snow Days at Avon High School in depth. Walk me through that whole process. There's a day, let's say it's a Thursday, and everyone's like, there's going to be massive snowfall. Walk me through that process Wednesday night of kind of deciding, looking at it, forecast, everything like that. What are you doing Wednesday night?
So typically I look at forecast every day for the week ahead. And to be honest with you, local superintendents start texting each other. What are you thinking this week? Should we talk about it? I think about, are we prepared with our vehicles? 2 of our buildings, we actually remove the snow ourselves. 3 of the buildings we contract out. And so are they ready to do the work that we need to do to get kids in school?
When Mr. Hodge and other superintendents are considering calling school off, weather plays a big role. But what kind of weather patterns mean snow is coming? For this question, I thought I should ask someone with experience on the topic.
They're called clipper systems. So you can have a Colorado clipper, which is essentially a low pressure that originates in Colorado but then tracks. But if you ever hear of a system and they're saying, it's coming from the south moving north along the east coast, that's typically where those originate. We also have an Alberta clipper. So essentially what happens is this is a low pressure that originates in Alberta, Canada, and it dives south. And with that, it essentially brings really cold air, which will essentially merge with fairly moist air from the Gulf of Mexico over our area and then give us some light, fluffy snow. Those are the 2 things we really start paying attention to just to see right off the bat if we're possibly in the path of it.
That's Raylene Campbell. She's a meteorologist at the National Weather Service. For extreme weather, they're the people to go to.
So the National Weather Service has over 100 offices across the country, and what our job is to essentially monitor the weather and then alert the public of any significant ongoing weather concerns. So any warnings you guys get, any watches, things of those natures, that comes straight from us.
Many times, the warnings the National Weather Service sends out aids superintendents' decisions to call snow days. But they also talk to each other.
Yeah, so we actually, the last week, we set up a Google Meet to talk about it and what our concerns were, because it's good to hear different perspectives. And when there's different alerts, like even on Friday went to a level 2, then it starts to almost become a no-brainer. I mean, the local sheriff department's telling you it's not safe to be on the roads, and level 3 it is a no-brainer. But that conversation is just to throw everything out there to make sure you're not missing anything. I actually carry in my backpack and on my phone a checklist of things that I think about, people that I should contact, with Bill Fishley, Director of Operations, being one, and the mayor another one. But we talk and make sure we're not missing anything, and it is like a united front sometimes, and it's easier because if you're the district that didn't call off school, let's be honest, and something happens, that's not going to go well, and we all know that. So we all truly want to, first of all, we want to be in school. If you're not in school, you can't learn. But second of all, or actually first of all, is school safety. Are everybody going to be safe coming to school? So we talk, and there is a trickle effect that, and if you notice the last 2 days, everybody called off about the same time. There's a reason for that.
It's interesting to hear how superintendents communicate with each other and how that affects their decision. But Mr. Hodge also talks to someone most of us are familiar with.
Mr. Hodge is not just somebody I used to work with, but somebody I consider a good friend. So, of course, we still are networked, and we certainly text and call one another a lot about a lot of things because that's helpful. I do have a different network of superintendents that I talk to about snow days over on my new side of town. So we're in contact with one another quite a bit because we're just by location, it makes sense that we'd be seeing similar weather conditions because of proximity to one another.
Mr. Hodge and Mr. Laub call snow days in a unique part of the country. Cleveland weather is simply unpredictable. Raylene has a great explanation as to why this occurs.
Cleveland weather is quite unique because we have the lake. And the lake moderates a lot of our weather patterns. So when the lake is not frozen, essentially Lake Erie acts as a moisture source. So any cold, really cold air that moves across the lake ends up producing snow. And it depends on the wind direction as to where that snow is going to move inland. So we've had lake effect snow hit in Lorain County. So it's quite the challenge because lake effect often can accumulate fast, and it also accumulates in a very narrow area versus, some winter storms, it's very broad brushed and everybody gets snow. Where lake effect, you can drive 5 miles down the road and, you go from 5 inches of snow to 12 inches of snow in that 5 miles. So it's quite a challenge to know and figure out where those bands are going to set up.
Now, it's hard to talk about snow days at Avon without talking about Twitter. And of course, I had to with Mr. Hodge and Mr. Lobb. Can you speak on that Twitter culture a little bit? And it seems like you've actually jumped in with quote tweeting somebody and replying back with your own little rebuttal. Can you speak on that Twitter culture?
Yes. So, Twitter is a way that we showcase things that happen in a district. So what a better way to get followers to say that I'm going to post school cancellation on Twitter first. And by the way, it is purposeful that I wait at least 15 minutes before I send an alert to the parents in email. And I would say what's funny, Logan, is that week that we knew bad weather was coming in, I think I got 500 to 600 new student followers.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, because everybody knew, right? We were just waiting for that first one to go to a different level with followers, which I think is great because maybe I'll tweet out something later when we're not talking about emergencies that people will follow and go, oh, I didn't know that was happening. So it's fun. It's fun that they tweet things at me. I'm careful and I don't intentionally reply back because that could be a little bit of a war that the superintendent doesn't need to be a part of. I know I did reply to one student because I thought it would be fun, and it was harmless. But other than that, I'm just going to look at comments. That's probably actually the most enjoyable, as long as they are good in nature. Most enjoyable thing is sitting at 10 o'clock if we call off the night before looking at some of these tweets. Funny part about it is, it's no secret that Mr. Lobb and I are really good friends. And so we were texting back and forth who had the better transformed face from Twitter about being royalty or king or whatever people do, and it was entertaining to us that night.
Yeah, you're seeing a lot of push and pee comments.
I have, and I had to figure out what that was because I didn't know what that was. So I came to the high school and asked some students that I think I trust of what that is, and I learned a lot because I don't listen to rap. I listen to country and probably 80s. Yeah. So that was a learning experience for me. But yes, that's definitely the big thing now.
So I always look for the good in things. And I think most of the Twitter banter or posts are meant to be fun, and people are trying to have a good time with what's sometimes a stressful or unknown situation. So I'm actually certainly, I like the little bit of banter back and forth. Are there inappropriate Twitter responses and memes and things? Yes. Quite frankly, I just ignore those. Especially when I don't call a day that people think I should call. I know that kids like to have some fun with that. I have no problem with it. As a matter of fact, I enjoy it a little bit. I think it's, sometimes it's amusing and kind of fun to, it's almost a little celebration of a snow day that you see take place on Twitter. And I'm okay with that. None of those things, whether it's the really fun stuff or the not so fun stuff, none of that bothers me.
Something that often came up on Twitter and in person among students was Mr. Lobb's famous truck. I thought it'd be interesting to ask him about this and ask what Mr. Hodge drives. The student perception is that because you drive a truck, four-wheel drive, that you're not sympathetic to maybe somebody who has a front-wheel drive.
Certainly. So, yes, I still drive my big truck. It's safer for me when I'm going to be on the road no matter what, trying to make the decision. But we certainly, as I'm driving around, I don't imagine that everybody's driving a big four-wheel drive truck. I certainly understand that there are 16 to 18-year-old drivers who are going to be on the road as well. And that does factor in. When I was in Avon, I had 2 students in the district as well who also drive. And so I certainly always kept in mind that people are driving different kinds of vehicles, and what that might look like on the roads for them versus me.
A very big point of contention in the past between students and Mr. Laub had to deal with him driving a very capable truck, and so people thought that affected his decision. Would you consider your car to be better than average in the snow when you're trying to decide if it's a hazard?
So it would make you feel better if I have a Prius, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, I don't. I have a 4-wheel drive truck too.
Okay.
So, yes, I could see that perspective. And so I try not to let that sway me a little bit. I really rely highly on my decision, my thinking, and Bill Fishley, our director of operations, because he lives 2 minutes from every building, and he's up before probably I am with maintenance crews, and he's the one that has direct contact with the services that we use to clean the other buildings to get their opinion.
Do you think Mr. Hodge will live up to your legacy of calling snow days? What do you think of him? Can you talk about kind of him taking that leadership role?
Yeah, I think he is the perfect person for the position, whether it's snow days or otherwise. When I was in Avon, I certainly loved my 9 years there, but it was a team effort, and Mr. Hodge was a huge part of that team. I certainly couldn't think of a better person to hand the keys over to, and I'm excited. I'm proud of what we did while I was in Avon with the team. I think Mr. Hodge will take it up a notch. I really believe that, because I think great school districts evolve. So whether it's about snow days or other things, I still have a child in Avon schools, and I'm very excited that Mr. Hodge is leading the charge in supporting the team out in the building, whether it be educationally or for any other decision such as snow days.
There are so many variables that have an impact on how a potential snow day turns into a snow day. Maybe next time you're refreshing Mr. Hodge's Twitter feed the night before a big storm, you'll think about the whole situation a little differently.